There's a moment every entrepreneur hits. You're working harder than you ever have. The calendar is packed, but the inbox feels endless. That to-do list never gets shorter, and somehow the business still isn't growing the way that it should be. But the problem isn't effort. The problem is leverage. Welcome to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, John Davidson, and every week I'm sitting down with founders and top performers who have found that lever. The hire, the system, that mindset shift that changed everything. This show is for the business owner who's ready to stop being the bottleneck and start being the architect. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, John Davidson, and I'm excited to be joined by Jim Cardello. He is a licensed realtor and associate with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services and Verani Realty. Jim, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I am down here in Dallas, Texas, and it is hot as all get out. How are things up in the Northeast up there?
It's perfect. It's always perfect here in the Northeast. In the Northeast, you might even be aware that it is the number one place for people to move to in the country.
Yeah, it's a hidden gem up there, right? And so tell me exactly where your focus is in the Northeast and what makes it a great place to buy a home.
Sure. So I focus I'm licensed in the state of New Hampshire and in the state of Massachusetts. Licensed to sell real estate. I spend most of my time, about 85% of that is in New Hampshire, a little bit in Massachusetts. We've got the Northeast and New Hampshire in general. We've got four seasons. We've got, if you live, I live in a town called Litchfield, New Hampshire, just outside of Manchester, which is the airport in the state of New Hampshire. And that puts me about 45 minutes north of Boston and about an hour and 10 minutes south of Loon Mountain for skiing purposes and recreational purposes. So, and maybe another 35 to 40 minutes to the seacoast, to the Atlantic Ocean. So we're really centrally located for really anything that anybody wants to do and be a part of, culture-wise, recreation-wise, commute-wise. It's a great place.
Wonderful. And before we hit record, I was sharing that I've been to 46 states, and all of them except for Alaska, and unfortunately, where you are selling homes. So I have not yet been to Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. I've been everywhere else. But you told me, you said, John, when you come, make sure you come in October. Why should I come in October?
So what I think we're best known for is the fall foliage season. So people come from everywhere to take a look at the changing of the leaves, the color changing of the leaves. And I mean, you can see some vibrant oranges, yellows, reds. It's gorgeous. And if you get to the right spots, you can see it for miles. And it's a beautiful sight.
I love that. I know for those of us, if you haven't been there, we've all seen pictures of it, and it's absolutely beautiful. I can't wait to experience it in person. Well, Jim, you've been in real estate for 24 years, almost a quarter century. Congratulations in advance. Take me back to the origin of your real estate career. How did you find real estate, and what was that moment like when you decided to jump into it?
So it's interesting. The Verani family has been around. I guess now we're probably talking about doing real estate for over 60 years now in this area. And I grew up in a town called Londonderry, New Hampshire, Londonderry High School. One of the Veranis, Giovanni, was 2 years behind me in high school.
Okay.
And his sister was a little bit older than me, and she's I guess she's the president and he's the CEO, or vice versa. I'm not sure which. But back in 2002, I had just come off of a job, probably my first real job outside of fun things to do. Fun things to do meaning I used to be a baseball coach, and I would be in minor league baseball, and I had a chance to join a company called Zymac. It was a headhunting firm. I was trained to recruit high level people for at the time in the technology space of optics and wireless. And it wasn't so much the technology that was what the training was about. It was more about how do you interact with people. And I was trained by the president of that company and directly, and I learned how to move from being an athlete and a coach to being somebody that could have a presence in a room and have a conversation and be smart about it and understand how to read people and how to understand what they're feeling and then work with that. And it provided just a tremendous base. 9/11, 2001, that industry kind of changed a little bit, and it was time to start looking around for other opportunities. And I took on a couple of temporary positions, temporary roles. Again, fun stuff, things that I knew baseball wise. I started a mascot company, and we traveled all over the country doing appearances at minor league baseball parks. And
That's fun.
and it was just a lot of fun. Our main character was a guy called the Monkey Boy, the world famous Monkey Boy. And I know we're a little bit off topic, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, no, it's great.
That was a great business. It was the model was great. We were getting, at the time, we'd get paid $1,500 plus travel expenses to go to wherever we needed to go and entertain people.
Yeah.
And then he tore his ACL.
Oh, Monkey Boy. Monkey Boy's down.
Yeah, on the turf at a arena football game in Connecticut. And
oh my goodness.
And so yeah, that changed that business very quickly. So then it was time to start looking around, see what was going on. And I think I was actually looking in the newspaper, those things, pieces of paper where you used to be able to read the pieces of paper in the news, and it was a classified ad, and it said, looking for realtor in Bedford, New Hampshire. And I lived in Litchfield, New Hampshire, still do. And I looked at it, it said Verani Realty, and I said, oh wait, I went to high school with a guy by the name of Verani, and I said, I should check this out. And then I did. I called, and we talked, and then I started, and I learned the business. I found out that taking tests was important. You had to pass, passing the licensing tests was first and foremost, and nothing starts without that. Well, I'm sure we'll touch upon that a little bit down the road here in this conversation, but yeah, that's how I got to start.
Wonderful. And what was it like when you stepped in there and actually started showing homes and taking out clients for the very first time?
Yeah, I'm thinking back. It's funny because I'm currently in conversations today. Even I had a text message yesterday with my very first client back in 2002, who was a college classmate of mine, and I helped her sell her condo in New Hampshire, and that was really my first piece of business. And I think back on it, and of course, when you're fresh and you're starting, and you want to do everything right, and you want to have all the answers and so on and so forth. What I learned fairly quickly is I couldn't have all the answers. There's no way I could have all the answers, because what happens in real estate changes. Real estate is one of the biggest things that any person is going to invest in ever in their entire life. It's one of the biggest decisions they'll ever make. And when you're doing it as a young man or a young woman or whatever, as a job, you're trying to earn a living. You're not really realizing the impact you're going to have on people's lives, when you're able to give that proper consultation, or the experience and the ability to to navigate through the process and everything that goes along with it. And when you're young and early on in the stages, you don't know what you don't know yet. And so that first time was great. You go through the process, you go through the home inspection, and then things come up in a home inspection. I couldn't have told you back then what the difference between an oil burner and a propane furnace was. I couldn't tell you the difference. Now I can. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, there's no substitute for experience, and we'll get a little bit more into that a little later. But like we said, you've been here 24 years. You've been a top performer. How do you maintain that consistency once you get to that point over 2 decades?
Sure. In the beginning, it was a lot of work, a lot of time. Um, because not only is the learning curve there, but it's okay. Well, how do after I exhaust my college friends and my family and my neighbors and so on and so forth from a perspective of how do I find new business? Well, that question comes up. How do I find new business? Well, it's marketing. It's all kinds of different types of marketing. There's direct mailers. There's door knocking. There's I when I first started, I was fortunate. I was able to have access to a billboard on a road in between the two towns that I kind of grew up in, Derry and Londonderry. And I put up a billboard, and I honestly can't say that that anybody said, "Hey, I saw you on the billboard. I want to work with you."
Mm-hmm.
But what I can say is that once I put the billboard up, I got a lot of business,
Huh.
and I know that played a big part in it. At the time, there weren't a lot of people doing that kind of thing, and it just so happened that it kind of fell in my lap. But that was kind of something that was out of the box. It was a little bit different than other realtors were doing, and I think it just made an impact. So that's how that started. But then over time, you develop a business just like any business. Your intro talks about entrepreneurs and running a business and so on and so forth. And most people will tell you that it's going to take 3 years to establish a business. If you can get through that first 3 years, you can have an established business. And I think that's probably very similar here with real estate, because the more business you do, the more business you have access to. When you close a deal with somebody and you've done a good job for them, there's a good chance they have a friend or a relative or a neighbor or somebody that they're going to refer you to. And that's this business, just more than most, I think, is key. So you have to do right by your clients and make sure that they're talking well about you to their friends and neighbors. And I guess I've been fortunate that that's been the case. So even now, as I don't think I'm towards the end of my career, because I don't see why I would ever stop doing this business. But as I've gotten into the quarter century mark, the last 4 or 5 years, I want to say it's been fruitful because of the people that I've worked with 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and their children are starting to become first-time home buyers, or they're downsizing, or wanting to do whatever, and I think that's where it comes in. Now, we still doing marketing? Absolutely. Are we still sending out mailers and emails and still doing that. So
So it's kind of what got you here will keep you here sort of a thing. Now, clearly you've done a great job with referrals. The snowball is rolling downhill and growing all the time. How do you effectively keep in touch with your clients between transactions so you continue to stay top of mind for both their business and word of mouth referrals?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm great at that. I'm not. To be frank, I will, and I think this is important. I will, if I think of somebody for some reason, something came up. Oh, that reminds me of so and so. I'm going to just reach out and say, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, was thinking about you today. Hope all's going well with the house." That type of thing. It's more. I want to say it's kind of a touchy-feely type way of doing it. I know that there are systems in place through the CRMs out there that will do a drip campaign that will automatically do that. That's not my style. It hasn't been my style. But I feel like that personal touch is what's kept me relevant to be able to continue to do the business I've been doing. Now, I do know that there are realtors that are doing more business than me every year. But there's about 80% that are doing a lot less than I'm doing every year. So
that's wonderful. Well, I know that you have a special skill in negotiation, and so I want to get into some of your learnings on that. But before we do that, let's listen to a short message from our sponsor, Sphere Rocket.
Business owners and entrepreneurs will place a proven executive assistant VA for just $4 to $8 an hour, and if they don't perform, you don't pay. Imagine freeing up 20 plus hours a week by someone handling your most time-consuming tasks like admin work, managing emails, scheduling meetings, and so much more. This one hire could transform your productivity and give you back the time you need to focus on growing your business. At Sphere Rocket VA, we make this possible in as little as 7 days. We'll place a proven executive assistant VA in your business for just $4 to $8 an hour, and your VA will take over day-to-day administrative tasks, help manage your email and calendar, follow up with past clients, giving you back 20 plus hours a week so you can increase your sales and even enjoy more personal time. And here's the best part. If they don't give you back 20 plus hours a week in the first month, you don't pay Sphere Rocket a dime. We've done this for thousands of business owners, and now it's your turn to see the results. Click the link around this video to schedule a demo and discover how this one hire can completely change how you run your business. Remember, if within 45 days the VA doesn't perform, you don't pay.
All right, we are here with Jim Cardello, and he is focused in the New Hampshire and Massachusetts areas in the Northeast, and he's sharing with us not only what makes this area a great place to buy a home, but the insights he's learned throughout his career. Jim, as we discussed before the break, you have a lot of experience with effective negotiation, and that's a topic that I am personally fascinated by, the psychology of it. I'm halfway through the book. I'm like, what is it? Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is really interesting from an FBI negotiator. Share with us, with your experience in real estate, some tips on effective negotiation.
So I think I'm fairly unique in this one because I in the business, I think when I meet my clients, we talk about, how are we doing? How are we going to do this? They see let's say we're representing a buyer at this particular case, this example. Meet the buyer, we tour a home, or we tour a number of homes, and we see the things that they like and don't like, and maybe they found the perfect property as we're going out and looking. It's important to get to know their personalities. So oftentimes you'll have a husband and a wife, or maybe just a man, or maybe just a woman, but you need to know their personalities. And oftentimes you'll get somebody who's super excited about what they're looking to accomplish. Love this house. I can't wait to buy it. I'll do anything. Tell me, do whatever it takes to get it. Make sure we do that. So, okay. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. We're going to at some point, have the seller's agent is outside, or when we go through the house the next time you may meet them, what I'm going to ask you to do, have you ever played poker? I'd say, and they'd say, yeah. I say, okay, well, one of the terms is keeping your cards close to your vest. And right. and that's what I try to encourage people to do, because we don't need to let anybody know what you're feeling, because we're not going to know how the other party's feeling.
That's right.
So what we'll do is we will look at the facts. We'll see, okay, what's your asking price? We'll then do some research in the market and see what the recent homes have sold for. And we'll have a general idea as to how they came up with their price, their asking price, and then we'll have a pretty good idea as to what the value will be. And years ago, I'd say that used to be, the win was if you got the price that you wanted at somewhere less than what the seller was asking for. That used to be the win, right? And at that time, I think sellers were expecting to receive offers 5 to 10% lower than they're asking, and meet somewhere in the middle, right? You talk about the book, and that's a lot of times that's how it went. Nowadays, it's different. The listing prices are, and I tell my clients now, listing prices are hope numbers. They're just numbers that have kind of been brought out based on somebody else's sale, and now because they got $50,000 over asking price, which we've all heard that happens. Right. Well, you can list it $50,000 more than it's worth. Well, that's maybe not the case. So I always ask my buying clients, ignore what they're asking. Let's look at the facts. Let's keep our information to ourselves, and let's see what we can do. And I'm not saying that they don't have to pay over asking price, but doesn't mean we have to. And so the negotiation part of it is it's really understanding what each client wants to do, and how and are they able to make it happen. And then how do we do that? from a realtor perspective, if I'm representing a buyer, I'm going to try and get them the best price possible. If I'm representing a seller, I'm going to get them the best price possible. Those are two completely different numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to understand the mentality of each party. So how do we do that? I shared a little bit about what we do with my buyers if I'm representing the buyer, but in that negotiation process, I've got to ask the seller's agent questions. I ask them a lot of questions, and some they'll answer and some they won't. But my goal is to get them to give me as much information as they're willing to share, so that I can use it against them later in the negotiation process. And I've been very successful with that.
Now, every negotiation has points of leverage, right? And so what are some of the points of leverage when you're representing a buyer? And then what are some of the points of leverage when you're representing a seller?
Well, give me an example of what you're asking.
For example, like timing. Somebody is trying to sell the house. Yeah.
So again, if I'm representing a buyer and let's say, John, you're the seller's agent, I'm going to ask you those questions. I'm going to say, okay, what's your client's motivation? Do they have any? And they may say, well, they're looking to move to Florida, or they're looking to move to, okay, great. Do they have a time frame? And you're going to tell me that. And then I'm going to say, okay, if they were to receive an offer with this proper time frame, what's the likelihood of them accepting it? And and again, continue to ask the questions. My training back at Zymac was what they call peeling back the onion. You keep going, until you get the answers that you can use. And that's I say that's a point of leverage. It's the point of leverage is asking questions and keep asking the questions until you can get an answer that you can use. And that's how that works from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I'm curious. Obviously, real estate is a small world, right? And so you're going to be working with an agent again and again and again, right?
Sure.
And so how do you kind of straddle that line of getting the best deal for your client and also making sure that the agent on the other side of the table is going to work with you again and develop a rapport with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think if you do the business the right way and you're ethical and you do what you say you're going to do, then you become somebody who people want to work with. And I can say numerous times. I'm gonna reference the pandemic again. When COVID hit, nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew if realtors were ever going to be able to sell another house again, or what. And it turned out completely opposite of that, right? The industry exploded. But what started happening is you ended up getting numerous offers, for any property at any price, right? So you end up getting, okay, let's say you have 8, 10, 15 different offers. You then also have 8, 10, 15 different realtors that you might have to talk to. Okay.
Right.
I can tell you, I don't know, I can't count on my fingers how many times I had a realtor that I had worked with before say, Jim, we've done business together. I know who you are. I know how you work. We're going to accept your offer because I know you're going to get the deal done, as opposed to somebody that maybe they hadn't known or didn't work with. And so I think having integrity and being able to do the things the right way. It's funny, iron sharpens iron, or that kind of thing. You work with good agents, then they know what a good agent looks like.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, well, looking over to first-time buyers, what are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing first-time home buyers make?
First-time home buyers today are using social media to figure out how to buy a house, let's just say. And so the first mistake, it's not always a mistake, but the first mistake could be determining who they want to work with by what their social media looks like. I'm not great at it, but I can tell you that my 22 24 years of, I always have to keep looking at the year. 24 years of experience makes more sense for a first-time home buyer to work with than the person with the flashiest social media ad. And I think that can be a big mistake. I've worked with, I've had teams in the past where we've brought in young people to learn how to do the business with me, and kind of go through the way I process things and so on and so forth. And they typically will stay with me for about a year, and then they would move on and go individual and become individual agents. And what I found is those younger folks that I've worked with are missing a lot of things when it comes down to the process of getting to closing, and sometimes that can burn a buyer. At the end of the day, it might cost the buyer more for it might cost them the purchase of the house, but it also might cost them some money at closing, or it might cost them because things aren't being noticed or caught. And when there was that friend, it was pretty prevalent in that 2021-22 timeframe, when it was a frenzy. People were buying houses they weren't doing inspections, they weren't doing this, they were paying over asking price and way beyond what the appraisal was worth, or whatever, just so they could have a house in New Hampshire, which goes back to what I said earlier. This was a great place to move to when things weren't going so well across the country in different cities.
Right.
And it still is. I think I might have gone off topic here. So thinking about, what first-time home buyer, the mistakes they make is sometimes just not making the right decision up in the beginning, in the beginning of their process, to figure out who do I need to work with, and how do I get the information I need to determine who I should work with.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. I can't say that it's tangible. I think if you're looking for a tangible thing, do they make a mistake by, they didn't notice, what would cause, what are the things you can notice when you're looking at a house to determine whether or not there's moisture in the basement? That is, that's something that you can learn over time. I don't necessarily think that's the biggest mistake a buyer can make. I think that's why they need the right person with them to be able to see those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, and to your point about social media and everything, there's a lot of discussions in real estate about, hey, you need to leverage the most recent technology. Obviously, social media is a big part of that. But when it really comes down to an agent really being effective and being successful for their clients, those principles are timeless, right? And so help me understand just a little deeper of, why experience and knowledge really trump social media savvy.
Sure. I'll give you a live example. Currently working on a listing in Massachusetts. It's a condo, and this is not typically a market where you are willing to take what they call a home sale contingency. You're not willing to accept that because you typically have to wait for somebody else to sell their house while you take yours off the market for that particular buyer, if there's a home sale contingency. But sometimes it's the better solution, because you have, the general rule of thumb is, okay, we're not going to accept a home sale contingency, but why? Why aren't you going to accept the home sale contingency? Well, if you don't know the reasons behind it, then there's an experience will play a part in that, because in this particular case, my client was the seller and the buyer was coming in, and they had a home to sell. They had it under agreement, but it had to close before they could close on the purchase. And so I was able to guide my client beyond what he was hearing from other people. That was, don't ever accept a home sale contingency. Well, why not? Well, because that's what I was told. That's what my father told me, or that's what my uncle told me, or whatever. Well, okay, so there are circumstances. You have to dig in and understand the circumstances. And if you've not been through it before, then you don't know that this particular home sale contingency is mitigated by the fact that it's already under agreement. It's already been through the inspection stage. It's already been through the appraisal stage, and everything else has been, taken care of. But if you've never been through that before, all you hear is home sale contingency, and you don't want to do it.
Right.
So the home sells, everybody's happy, and we just did that this week. So that's just one example of having experience and knowledge of the things that might be that might be a hindrance in another transaction. But I can also say that live examples right now, I'm going through 2 or 3 things with other listings and purchases that I've never experienced before in 24 years. There's the date again. We had you can't replace experience. And what I've learned in this business is that no transaction is exactly the same, but you can take bits and pieces from different transactions. So when something does come up in another transaction, you can draw on that, and you can draw on how did that get handled? What was the negotiation process like at that point? And until you've gone through it all, you wouldn't know. You just don't know what you don't know. It's a big deal. It can be big. It can be a huge deal for particularly first-time home buyers.
Yeah. Well, and so for those young real estate agents who are listening, who are saying, well, Jim, that's all well and good that, you're telling me how important experience and knowledge is. There's no shortcut for experience, but how can I gain knowledge most effectively or as fast as possible if I'm a young real estate agent?
Yeah, and I encourage people to join the business. It's a great business. You can learn a lot. It takes a lot of different skill sets. It's not just one skill set that you have to have, and you aren't. I also tell people, I would tell the young agents, listen, you're never going to sell somebody a house that they don't want. So you're named a salesperson, but you're not selling them a house. You're going to guide them through the process to help them buy something that they want to buy, but you're not going to sell them the house, right? So kind of that mindset is first and foremost. I think you have to understand that when you get into the business. And again, taught way back in my recruiting days, I can't look at you as a buyer as a dollar sign. It doesn't matter if my mortgage is due next month. Mm-hmm. You can't be the reason why I have to pay it. I have to look at you as a consumer and somebody who you're hiring me to help you understand and navigate the process, and trusting me to ensure that you're being put in the right position to do the right things at the right times. Yeah. And again, you need experience and knowledge to do those things, to make sure you do that for your client. Because at the end of the day, the client is all that matters. The dollar signs happen down the road, but the client is all that matters. And so how do you get I think if you're a young agent, you're just starting, you need to ask a lot of questions to the people who have been around. You need to go do it with them. Bring somebody with you. And so that when you have a conversation, you think there might be one answer to that conversation or to that question, but if somebody hears the question, they can show you 4 or 5 different ways that could go. And you need to be prepared for that. It's a really fun business. My wife tells me the other day, because I told her one of the deals we're working on now is there are a lot of pieces that need to fall into place to make it happen. And it's been frustrating, to be honest. But sure. My wife said, well, you love that. You love putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I said, yeah, you're right. I said, that is my favorite part of the business. It's a big puzzle. Every transaction is a puzzle, and you got to put all the pieces together. And sometimes somebody takes the pieces away and throws them in the trash. Somehow you got to then figure out how to get those back and put those pieces back together. And that's the business. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of experience and knowledge, you have experience not just with existing builds, but also with custom homes. What are some of the differences when somebody is purchasing an existing build compared to having a brand new custom home built?
Yeah, it's in the beginning, it's a lot of people think that they just want to build a house, and I built the first house we did a new construction. It was the second house we owned. We did new construction, but we didn't know anything about that at the time. I wasn't a realtor at the time. So we had the house built by a builder, and we could have customized a bunch of things in it. We just didn't know that we could. And so we didn't. And so now, getting involved with new construction was kind of an eye opener for me, because I have a good friend, Mark McNullah, who builds houses. He's a good builder, but he's also an engineer by trade. And so what I've learned working with him, because he builds truly custom homes for people, and what I learned working through him is, because he's an engineer, he has an engineer brain. He has typically a more efficient way to build a house that makes more sense for a buyer than typically when the buyer knows, and they come in and they say, well, I'd really like to have X. I'm trying to think of a good example, but maybe the way the house is heated or something along those lines. And then Mark will say, okay, well, that makes sense. And what I would recommend is you put radiant heat in the flooring in the kitchen, so that you will experience that heat without taking away anything from the height of the ceiling.
Right. Yeah. Great point.
Yeah, which is important, to a lot of people. So when you're dealing with a custom built home, you have ideas. As a customer, you have ideas. Consumer, you have ideas. So you want to work with a builder that can take those ideas and make them work the most efficient way possible. And so when, if I were a new consumer saying I want to build a house and I have some ideas I want to do, I'd try to find a realtor that works with people that can build houses and do it efficiently.
Yeah, that's very well said. Well, Jim, I have one final question for you here, and I really appreciate your time here, sharing your career journey as well as your insights over 24 years in real estate. For those learning and they're thinking, boy, those fall leaves sound great. Number one place to move in the United States. I want to look into buying a home, and this guy sure sounds like he knows what he's talking about and can get me the best deal. Jim, how can people get in touch with you to work with you?
My cell phone is 603-568-1576. My email address is jim.cardello, Cardello, @Verani, V as in Victor, ERANI.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Jim, for joining me today on the Leverage Podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.